In this video, we're going to be talking about portable air purifiers and really air purifier portability in general. Now, when it comes to discussing air purifier portability, there are three things we look out for. The first is size, the second is weight, and the third is the carrying handles installed on the unit. Now, let's talk about weight and size first. In terms of weight and size, there is definitely a spectrum on the market. Heavier air purifiers weigh close to 20 pounds or thereabouts. Smaller units can weigh as little as about 3 pounds. In terms of size, larger air purifiers can be as much as 3 feet tall and 2 feet wide. Smaller units can be under 1 foot tall and even less wide and deep. Now, the major issue here when it comes to size and weight of air purifiers is that the smaller units are generally not recommended. And we're going to get into that in quite a bit of detail next. So let's take a few minutes just to talk about why we generally do not recommend small air purifiers. Now, the fact is that small air purifiers just in general tend to be less energy efficient. They tend to be not as quiet. They tend to be not as durable, and they tend to be not as versatile as larger air purifiers. And on top of that, they are usually also a far worse value than larger units. And the thing is that they are not necessarily all of those things. A single small unit is not necessarily energy inefficient and a poor value and not quiet, et cetera, et cetera. However, usually it hits on at least 2 or 3 of those things, and that's what keeps us from recommending that particular small unit to consumers. We actually have an example of that on the table here today. We have the Honeywell HPA 100. Now, this is a very light unit. It weighs in at just under 8 pounds. And on maximum output, this unit has an output of about 100 CFM or so. Now, the issue here is that in order to achieve that output of 100 CFM, the unit has to be set to its highest fan speed. And on this highest setting, it draws about 50 watts of power, and it outputs at about 68.7 decibels of noise. On the table as well, on the far side here, we have a Winix 5500-2, and this unit is a little bit heavier. It weighs about 16.5 pounds, and it can also be set to output at 100 CFM. Remember, this unit has to be set to its maximum setting, its turbo setting, to output at around 100 CFM. The Winix can also be set to output at 100 CFM, but when it's set to that setting, it can be set to its second highest fan speed. And on that lower setting, it draws only about 10 watts of power or so versus 50 watts on the Honeywell at a very similar CFM. Also on that second highest setting, also on that lower setting, the Winix here outputs at less than 50 decibels of noise. And like we said earlier, the Honeywell outputs at close to 70 decibels of noise. So you have a substantial difference here with the smaller unit versus the larger unit at the same output. Now, this isn't necessarily a fair comparison because, yes, this unit has to be run on maximum settings, while this unit can be run on a lower setting to achieve that same output. However, understand that the implications here are that in terms of getting that output for a particular application for a particular setting, at that output, you're getting poor energy efficiency, you're getting a noisy unit compared to a much more energy efficient unit and a much less noisy unit. With that apples to apples comparison at the same output. And when you do so, the Winix is clearly the better option. So here we have a small unit compared to a larger unit, and we have just demonstrated to you how the smaller unit fails in that comparison with the larger unit, just in terms of energy efficiency and noise output alone. We also on the table here have a Blueair 411, and this is yet another example of how a smaller unit, we consider this blue unit a smaller unit, pales in comparison to a larger unit. Now, the blue unit actually has very good energy efficiency for a small unit, and it actually compares favorably even to the Winix in terms of energy efficiency, and that's very impressive for a small unit. But again, with the blue unit, it has to be set to that maximum setting to output at around 100 CFM. It actually outputs at around 120 CFM on its maximum setting. And at that same output, at approximately that same output on the Winix, you can have it set to a lower setting. And on that highest setting on the blue, you're dealing again with a very high noise output. On this 411 here, the noise output was measured around 65 decibels. Again, on the Winix, you're at less than 50 decibels. And so here we have a difference of 15 decibels. The discrepancy is not so much as it is with the Honeywell compared to the Winix. It's only 15 decibels here, but it's not the difference between 35 and 50 decibels, for example. If that was the difference in that range, then 35 decibels and 50 decibels are both low noise output. But this one at 65 compared to 50 on this one, at 50 you're still dealing with a very quiet appliance. Once you go up to 65, it's quite noisy on the Blueair unit here. So again, we've shown how the smaller unit doesn't perform as well as the larger unit at the same output. Now, it's important that we stress here that there's nothing wrong with the Blueair unit. There's nothing wrong with the Honeywell unit, at least in terms of having that high noise output. This is just a result of their design. They are small units, and because they are small units, the outlet size here is small. The outlet size up here on the Blueair unit is small, and the outlet size is much larger on the Winix. So at the same output, the air has to move quicker through here. It has to move quicker through here than it does through the Winix. And because of that, the noise is greater here. The noise is greater here than it is with the Winix. So understand that these are not necessarily bad air purifiers, that these are necessarily poorly designed air purifiers compared to the Winix. This is simply a result of them being small. And that is the point here, is that because a air purifier is small, sometimes it has inherent disadvantages. Now, we do want to note here that with the examples that we went over here, we didn't go over value, we didn't go over durability, we didn't go over things like that. But if you do take a look at our video on small air purifiers, if you do take a look at what we've written about small air purifiers, you'll understand this theme of small air purifiers generally not being recommended compared to larger units. So what is the bottom line here? Why have we spoken at length about the inherent disadvantages of smaller units? The point here is that despite the fact that they can be seen as being more portable than a larger unit like this Winix, the small size here has other disadvantages. And we feel like those disadvantages are substantial enough to not recommend smaller units, even if you are looking for a unit that has maximum portability. Something like this Blueair unit is very light. It's extremely light. Something like this Honeywell, like we're going to get into in just a minute here, has nice carrying handles on each side, and it's also fairly light, and it's obviously very small. And for those reasons, these units are generally viewed as being more portable. However, even though they are more portable, that is not to say that the Winix is not portable. If you compare them here on the table today, the Winix is not an extremely large appliance by any means. It is still a very reasonable size. It's still a very reasonable weight, and we feel like it is portable enough to still give us the ability to recommend it as a good option if you're looking for a portable unit. So we would definitely recommend a top-rated unit. That is going to tend to be on the larger side. That is going to tend to be on the heavier side. But a top-rated unit is not going to be too heavy. It's not going to be too large. Even at its larger size comparatively here, it's still not a overwhelmingly large appliance that is completely not portable. Now, at the beginning of this video, we mentioned 3 factors to determine portability: weight, size, and carrying handles. We've talked at length about weight and size here, especially comparing these 3 units. But what about carrying handles? Now, again, here we see the Honeywell unit do very well. It actually has side pocket handles here on each side. It's very easy to pick up. The Blueair unit actually does poorly here. It doesn't have any handle at all. You have to pick it up from the bottom. So you have to kind of tip it over on either side and then kind of put your fingers underneath there to lift it up and move it around. So the Blueair unit actually does not do well here. The Winix is an example of what is mostly implemented on most air purifiers on the market. It has a single handle on the back here, and you lift it up by that single handle on the top and the back here, and that handle is centered for equal weight distribution, so the unit isn't leaning over to either side when you pick it up. And this is what we mostly see on the market. And with that design where it's picked up from the back, we really didn't have any issues while testing such units. Now, that is not to say that it's not easier to pick up the Honeywell units. This Honeywell HPA series is very easy to pick up on both sides. It's definitely easier to pick up because you can use both hands here to pick it up. However, with that single handle design, there's a reason why it's implemented on most units on the market. It works quite well, and these units aren't overly heavy to the point where you really need 2 hands to pick it up. Most people will be able to comfortably pick it up with 1 hand here. So what is our bottom line recommendation here for a portable air purifier? Again, most consumers are going to be inclined to go and purchase a smaller unit, a lighter unit, because they view this as being more portable. But again, smaller units have other inherent design flaws. Smaller units have other issues that keep us from recommending them. So even if you are interested in a portable unit and that is a priority for you, we would generally say to not go with a smaller unit like this. Instead, we would say to go with a top-rated unit. It's not going to be too large. As you can tell here, it's not that much larger. It's not going to be that much heavier. It's still going to be very portable, and it is going to be a much better option in other areas. It's going to be more energy efficient. It's going to be not as noisy, and so on and so forth. And for all those other advantages that are inherent with a larger unit like this, we would tend to recommend a unit like this over these smaller units if you're looking for a portable air purifier.